Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Today I am joined by Marwa, aka Mimzy on YouTube. Hi Marwa, how's it going?
Hi, it's going really well. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. Okay, I gotta ask you right away, just because, okay, the name Mimzy, was that
Mm.
like a nickname or a pet name as you're growing up, or was that conscious? Because I remember, I think it was in 2015, there was an exhibition in London called Passions for Freedom. It was an annual art exhibit, and there was a Middle Eastern artist who goes by the name Mimsy, and a bunch of her stuff, they were told they couldn't display it because the cost of security would be too high because it would be offensive. And so I just didn't. I was just curious. Like, did you
Ah,
pick your name because of that?
I wanna say it's because of that. That's a way cooler story. I'm kind of annoyed that it's not that. No, it's not that interesting, unfortunately. It's actually I have a lot of like nicknames, um, and that one is probably the most painful one actually because it was like my bestest friend in like the whole wide world. Someone I've been close to since I was like 6. She calls me that, and she was the only one that calls me Mimsy. Um, and she doesn't talk to me anymore. So it's like one of those things. I told her that I don't believe in Islam, and she's kind of one of the most religious people in my life as well. I think she always has been. Um, and yeah, we just don't talk anymore. But it's weird. I kind of decided to name that name that kind of holds a lot of feelings behind it. I decided to call it that. So no one's asked me that question before, though.
Well, no, it's just okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to dredge up some bad memories or whatever.
No,
It's
no,
it,
no, not at all. I don't mind. No, I just thought like, yeah, I've never told anyone, so it's quite interesting. But yeah, so that's the reason.
yeah, no, it's just because I had heard of that artist, and I mean, I thought it was kind of ridiculous. Where
Yeah.
it was an art festival about, it was called Passions for Freedom, and it was about free expression. And
Okay.
I mean, okay, the pictures they banned. Um, she did a series called Mysis, and it was uh, these little woodland creatures. It was like a series for children. They were called like the Sylvania animals or something like that. So there was like
Oh, yeah.
squirrels and mice and that kind of stuff, and it was really just basically banal scenes. So, a picnic, a classroom, kids in a playground.
Well, those are toys, aren't they?
Yeah, but
Those,
so she
yeah.
so she set up all these
Oh,
scenes, and in the background she had mice dressed up as ISIS approaching all of these scenes, and they were called Mysis. And then the
wow.
police and the insurance said it was going to be too expensive to insure those, and they couldn't display them. So they displayed some of her stuff, but not those, even those that had been displayed somewhere else. And I'm like, sorry. And then so when your video started coming out, and I saw the name Mimsy, I was always curious if it was related to that. But yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, I want to look that up. I'm going to look this person up afterwards because she seems interesting.
I'll
But
send you a link to the the
yeah,
article about the art gallery and the banning of the thing. I mean, I don't know much else about her except for this. But yeah.
okay, cool, interesting.
Anyways, speaking about your videos, um, I started watching your videos, and then obviously your husband Vidu, he does his own.
Yeah.
And okay, so maybe I'm just, I don't know. The way I look at it is I find him, and I'm going to compare them both to animated shows. So I find
Okay.
his kind of like South Park. So it's very in your face and it's satirical.
Right.
Uh, but you, like, okay, and no offense intended whatsoever, but I found you
Go for it.
more like the Powerpuff Girls. So it's like this little whimsical thing, and
Yay!
it's kind of cute, and it's like you don't expect much, and then out of nowhere, it's like bam.
I am not offended by being Powerpuff Girls. No, that is like a perfect description. That is just me. I'm super, super girly and very pink. So anything I do will come across like that. Um, but yeah, as I said, that's kind of just my personality. So
But I
it,
mean, you don't pull your punches, though, right? I mean, you're. I'm not saying you're offensive or anything like that or rude, but you're very upfront about what you talk about.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's important to be in some circumstances, but yeah, I think you're right in the sense that for a long time, actually, Waleed Vidu, he kind of struggled with being upfront about it. I think, and I think that's partly actually because we were kind of going through the transition. I mean, he's been doing videos for a while, so you'll see like his videos have kind of got more more punchy as the years have gone on, and that's because they've kind of the views have solidified. And obviously, I've only come on in the last kind of 6 months or whatever. But yeah, I think my personality is also that like I'm quite straightforward, and I work in business, so you have to be straightforward in business. So yeah, so it's kind of the person I am as well.
Um, I wanted to talk about one of the videos you did, and it was one you actually had done with Waleed, and it was the one about the returning ISIS fighters.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
okay, I agree with the majority of what you guys said, and there's very little difference. Uh, my thought process was these people have, at the very least, they should be investigated for war crimes. You know, I,
The people returning, so like
yeah,
Shamima Begum, for
yeah, but
example.
all of them. I mean, anyone if you were there and you fought for ISIS,
Yeah.
okay, you should be investigated.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
there was a report from the federal police in Canada, and they said, it's almost impossible to investigate those kind of crimes in Canada. And I'm assuming it'd be the same in the UK or anywhere in Europe. And I don't want to put pressure on the infrastructure in like Syria and Iraq and all that, but the money you're wasting, and I consider it wasted money bringing them here and trying to try them here and all that. You could use that money and you can help to firm up the prison camps. You can, use prisons that are already existing that are hard sites and take over a couple of wings and put these people in there. You can do all kinds of things there. You can investigate them there. And if
You mean
there's,
in Syria to do all of that in
yeah,
Syria?
okay, well, that's where, okay, the people who are affected by them, that's where they are. I mean, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
are you going to parade Yazidi around all over the world to trial after trial to uh, to be witnesses? I mean, wouldn't it be better you have all the people who were affected by ISIS in that region? They're there. You can do investigations on the ground. You can do all that stuff there. So instead of spending money bringing them here, then doing all those investigations, in the UK, in Europe, in North America, in Australia, New Zealand, wherever, right?
Hmm.
Spend that money to, like I said, keep them in prison, help shore up the prisons there. If you've got prison camps, I mean, some of the conditions in the camps, they're appalling. Like there was an article
Yeah.
that came out that at least in one of the camps, the ISIS, the women who were, the ISIS brides, like the women of ISIS, they were setting up systems internally into the camp the way ISIS had set up their communities.
Mm.
And it's like,
Yeah, no, they are very bad conditions, and I mean that's why partly Shamima Begum's um, children were dying. Her three children. Um, but I don't know. I've never heard that version of it before. I've always just thought of it as, you know, they are our responsibility. I mean, if they're our citizens, it's like we kind of need to go through the proper procedure of them kind of coming here. And I almost kind of felt bad for Syria and for them to kind of take that responsibility when it's not their citizens to have to deal with all the kind of crap that comes with them still being there. But I've never thought about that. That's a interesting way of doing it. If we'd still kind of take control, but just shift it to us going there. But I don't know if that'll make it cheaper. I
but yeah,
think,
I don't know if it'll make it cheaper, but I think it'll be fairer all around. Okay, someone who's here and there's a lot of hatred. Let's say there's a trial going on, and then
mhm,
three consecutive terrorist attacks happen in whatever country that trial is going on.
mhm,
Won't And if this person honestly didn't do anything, because there were families who were living there who didn't do anything, right? Like there was Nadia Murad, the Yazidi woman. I mean, she's like the UN ambassador um,
mhm.
for peace or something like that. I mean, an incredible story. She was helped out by a family living in ISIS territory who smuggled her out, and they eventually got found out and were killed. Now, a family like that, they're living in ISIS territory. They're not complicit in any of it, right?
Mm.
So they shouldn't be punished for war crimes or anything like that. But if, let's say, one of them was being tried in whatever country, and like I said, there's three consecutive terror attacks, is that going to shift people's way of thinking to want to maybe punish these people for something else that was done and they had nothing, no part of it, right? So I'm just thinking like the fairest way to do it is in those places. And you were talking about like responsibility to your citizens and stuff. All the nations who have signed on to those war crime treaties are responsible to those treaties and to the other nations and to the people that those crimes were committed. So if their citizens were complicit in those actions, I think they should take a responsibility to say, yeah, these are our citizens, but you know, they are accused of some horrendous acts, and we want the truth of it known. And you're owning, like I'm not saying you're just letting them rot, but you're making sure that yes, these are our citizens, and we're going to own up, and they're going to be, we're not going to stop any due process from happening. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert in law. Obviously, I'm not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
You're letting who rot though? I didn't fully catch the kind of who do you think is missing out if they come back here and try and are trialed here?
well, okay. I'm thinking if they come back here and are tried here, like I said, there was the Canadian Federal Police, and I remember seeing something from Interpol about the difficulty in investigating and finding out the truth of if these people were actually did commit war crimes or not.
I don't know if that'd be made easier if they were there. I know there may be more people to kind of investigate in terms of interviewing, um, but I don't know. It is just one of those things that is very difficult to investigate as well because of the way that it is, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
but I mean, certain things would be easier. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Like, okay, so
no,
let's
no,
say you. Okay, Shamima Begum. Let's just take her for example. So they know
yeah,
the region that she was caught in or where she surrendered. Right? They know that area. So people who were captives of ISIS in that area, I mean, you can just show them her picture. Like, do you remember this person? And if one of
right.
those people does, or a few of those people do, and they said, okay, yeah, she did this, she did that, you can. But doing that from the UK or doing that from, uh, you know, like then when you're gonna like, you can have her in the UK, and you can pass her a picture around. But once you do have confirmation, how are you going to try that in the UK? Are you going to fly those people from that region to the UK to testify against her? That's what I mean. Like she's not,
I see.
like so. I think you can if you're going to
So
bring
you
them
would
here,
keep her
yeah,
there the whole time?
and until the whole process is done, and if she's found not guilty, bring her back. If you want to try her for treason against the crown, go ahead. That's
Yeah,
up to you.
that could definitely happen. I think also with this is a totally random case. It's just because I was watching a documentary the other day, but the Madeleine McCain, where that little girl went missing, and she went missing in Portugal, but she's British, and in that scenario, you know, our forces went over to Portugal. So I do think there's a way, and if there were a case, it would be brought back to England. If they had found someone, they would be brought back to England. So I don't know. I think if well, I think they'd have a case in Portugal and England. Actually, that's what they said. Sorry, but I don't mind the idea of having an investigation in Syria, gaining these kind of recordings of people, or I don't know, there must be ways around it. I don't think they necessarily have to do it there, but I wouldn't mind either way, to be honest, as long as these people are accountable. I don't really care how it happens. I think that the problem with Shamima Begum, the main problem is that people were just saying just leave her there to die, as in she's kind of given up her right to even be tried. And that was the thing that I kind of wasn't too sure about. I mean, if she's tried there or tried here, that doesn't bother me as much. It's more just, I think, especially with her kid recently dying, and that was why she was kind of crying out to Britain to help her. I do think that perhaps there should have been something a bit more, a bit more help should have been done. Even just kind of bringing the kid over. That's kind of what I initially thought, because that kid would have been a British citizen as well. And then, again, our responsibility, and we just kind of let him die, knowing that he most likely will die.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, okay, leaving her there, or any of them there, okay, just leave them there to rot. And okay, I understand it. There's like a certain part of me that, you know, fuck them. They just did the worst things possible. But
right.
no, I don't want to. That's something that ISIS would do. Like I don't want to do that. I think they should be given a trial. And okay, for her baby. So when it came out that she wanted to come back to the UK, and I'm sure before it became public, things were going on in the background. At that point, okay, bring her to a hospital, have her get some prenatal care. Like I think that's what should have been done. I'm
Yeah.
surprised that wasn't.
Well,
Um,
exactly. That's the thing. It
yeah,
was like it's happened so many other times. I mean, Shamima Begum is like one of many. So normally they do bring them over and that's it. The government essentially pays for them. But it was just this anger all across Britain, and it wasn't even kind of like 50-50. It was like the majority did not want her back and were happy for her just to be accountable for decisions she made when she was how old was she, 15, um, which I just thought was unfair, even though it's crazy what she's done and she should be accountable and she should be punished. I kind of was happy seeing her do some jail time or something along those lines, um, but I thought it was unfair. We're not barbaric in that way, just to be like, well, you should like rot and die. And I think they also were saying to her, well, you can go back to kind of Bangladesh. But they've been saying she's a dual citizen, but then other people are saying she's not. I don't think she actually is.
I think she had right to claim Bangladeshi. Okay,
Right.
again, this is there's so many stories out there. So I think what it
Yeah.
was her parents were Bangladeshi, like they were born there, and they came
Yeah.
over to the UK. She,
Hmm.
I believe, she was born in the UK, but because of
Yeah.
her parents, she had right to claim that citizenship.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the cutoff date. Like I know for like Canada, I believe it's 18. So let's say I had dual citizenship, or I was born in Canada. My parents moved to the States when I was very young, 1 or 2, and I grew
Hmm.
up in the States. At 18, I could at that point say no, I don't want my Canadian citizenship anymore. Right? I could just renounce it, and I would
Right.
just be a U.S. citizen. I don't know if that's, or I could go at 18 and say, okay, I want to still keep my Canadian passport and keep dual citizenship. Right? I could do that. She was in ISIS territory when she was 18. I don't know what the age limit is with Bangladesh anyway. So, you know,
Yeah,
uh,
there isn't always an age limit, but her dad actually lives in Bangladesh, like
okay.
has lived in Bangladesh. So it's just her mum actually that's in the UK. So yeah, so that's interesting. But just a side note, sorry, I tend to kind of jump from thing to
No,
thing, but I
fine.
just I just thought of something. This is something I was thinking about because for many years so I'm Egyptian and Moroccan, and my plan was to always get um, citizenship in both. Um, and actually, recently, my family have been saying you need to get the Moroccan kind of national card, whatever. And I've been thinking now that I'm like an ex-Muslim, that's like everyone, I'm on the internet and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, maybe not such a good idea. I don't know. Like, I've always thought, well, I'm British, they can't do anything to me if I go there. But if I like become one of them, that scares me a little bit. But yeah, it's just
Yeah,
something
no,
that I've been thinking about.
no. But I mean, okay, like the nationality thing. But getting back to like her, like I said, you could have,
Yeah.
again, I don't want her to. I'm not saying let her rot and just let her die. Let the kids die or whatever. Obviously, like if anyone needs looking after, it's these children. It's also people are talking about, okay, we can rehabilitate her, we can rehabilitate them, we can spend money. Again, I you know what, these people, if they did what they did, if maybe she didn't do anything explicitly, whatever,
Yeah.
but to rehabilitate her as opposed to the Yazidi children or the children of, the Yazidi are the easiest
Yeah.
ones to point
Yeah.
out, but like Shia, Christian, Jewish,
Yeah.
Sunnis who didn't think quite right, Sufis, whatever, like the kids that were the young boys that were taken and turned into killers. If anyone needs rehabilitation, they do, and if we want to claim responsibility as this is our fault, I think a lot of that responsibility, like a lot of our responsibility, is to help rebuild at least those lives. If not I'm not talking about going in and doing the whole infrastructure, all that, but at
Mm.
least those lives that were. If you want to feel some guilt or something, you know, I'm
Why does it have to be like
I,
her or them
oh
sort of
yeah,
thing?
no, I mean I don't think it should be her or them, but I think if you have limited resources and
Yeah.
you want to help people right away, I think the immediate help needs to go to those who are getting their lives back in order. Like I said, like with
Mm.
with her and with anyone else who is you know, part of ISIS or was part of ISIS, and they're you know, they're in this like no man's land type of thing. I said, let's
Mm.
investigate them. Let's try them. While that's going on, you can help. You know, that's that's not going to happen in a day or two, right? That's going to take a while to get that done. The
Yeah.
time you're doing that, you can use productively to help the people in that region. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, it'd be great to just have an organization that helps anyone, whether it's the Yazidi people or ex-ISIS people, or just kind of have this program where they do get kind of, rehab. But um, yeah, that'd be great. I mean, it's difficult because I can't see like Britain kind of really. I don't know. Maybe they would getting. I'm just thinking getting involved with kind of helping everyone at the same level, whether they're British or not. That would be great.
yeah, but I mean, it's especially the politicians who say, who are like, oh, we have to do this. They were, when I forget his name, Javed, I believe, who like the minister who revoked her citizenship. And the
Yeah,
politicians, oh, this is our responsibility. I'm like, okay, yes, fine. If it's your responsibility, then shouldn't your responsibility extend to the victims of your citizens who did those crimes? It's oh, we're going to bring them back and we're going to rehabilitate them. They're going to become useful members of society, and we've paid our debt and we've absolved ourselves of any responsibility. I'm like, what about the responsibility to the people that suffered?
yeah. No, definitely. No, I agree with you totally. Something should be put into place for them as well. Absolutely. I don't know the likelihood of it happening is the only
Yeah,
thing I'm questioning, but it would be great if it did.
but
But I
unfortunately, I
think
think unfortunately, I think it's like that kind of conversation is being lost because I follow a lot of Yazidi accounts,
okay.
and it's just you know that's basically all they're saying. It's like no one's listening to us. No one
Yeah, no.
whatsoever is listening to us, and it's you know one of the articles I read. It was it's like ISIS brides are being given preference over Yazidi victims, and
Mm,
you know the Yazidi, like all of those people are the victims in this situation, right? Like the Yazidi, the Shia, the Christians, like all of them. They were the ones
hmm.
who were raped. They were the ones whose kids were stolen. They were the ones who were slaughtered.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of concerned about these returning fighters. Like, oh, what's going to happen with them? You know, it's misplaced.
I think it's more fear factor with the fighters. I don't know if it's like that they're caring about the fighters so much.
Yeah,
Um, but you're right. I definitely think there's not enough being said or done for the Yazidi people and everyone that kind of, went through, were the victims, as you said. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that there will be sort of organisations that will support them, but it won't. I can't imagine it being kind of government set organizations. It will be, non-gov things, which is a shame because I think if the British government, as you said, took responsibility and then were like, because of what our people have done, we need to kind of help the victims. But yeah, I just can't see that happening.
yeah. All right. Well, I think it's a little bit of a downer, but
Yeah. Well, now that we've depressed
yeah.
everyone.
I wanted to get your take on like after the Christchurch shooting, and then the big conversation around wearing the hijab as a symbol of solidarity with Muslims.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
I was just like, oh no. um, I mean, it's like I get they're kind of wanting to, show unity or something, but it's just the strangest thing for me. It's like what it is. It's just ignorance. I mean, they just don't know really what the hijab is or what it resembles. What the meaning behind it, and it didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Um, it annoyed me actually. There's so many things actually that annoyed me. Obviously, I was heartbroken about what happened, but it's like what happened afterwards was this kind of attack on ex-Muslims as well, and people criticizing. So those two things, the hijab and then the attack on ex-Muslims, were just really frustrating. But with the hijab, you know. it just doesn't make any sense for someone to in any way, well, it's a symbol of oppression. Okay, so I mean that's what it is. There's nothing, there's no way around it. And so for someone to wear it, in solidarity or whatever they're wearing it for, it just doesn't make any sense. There were women suffering all around the world because of it. um it's just the wrong way to go about it, even though I get their intention.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I don't do much on Twitter except for make smarmy remarks, but I did like a short thread about that, and I said, it's misplaced altruism. And
Yes.
okay, I don't know what the stats are in New Zealand, but in North America, or at least Canada and the United States, it's about 51% that don't wear the hijab and 49% of Muslim women that do wear the hijab. So
Right.
based on like stats like that, if I use those for New Zealand, you're using a symbol that only represents 25% of the Muslims in your country.
Yeah, but
And
also just women as well.
yeah,
No,
no, but I mean,
you
yeah,
don't even
that's
guys.
just it. Like, it's half the women in your country. That's who you're representing.
Mm,
And I suggested using a green armband. I said, if you want to
mm,
show a symbol of solidarity with Muslims, like people wear
yeah,
armbands as symbols of memorials and things like that, and green is a color associated with Islam. So I'm like,
mm,
wear a green armband. It You're showing solidarity, you're showing mourning,
yeah,
and it's inclusive of every single Muslim.
yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It's
So
almost like they really want to go and do the like biggest possible gesture, because there is this kind of fear around Muslims. I mean, there is. I don't, they don't want to upset them. They want to show so badly that they're not going to offend them, and um, yeah. So I feel like it would be different if it was another group. It wouldn't be like we have to dress in their dress. Like I can't imagine it being the same. I'd imagine it being an armband if it was another group of people.
yeah, yeah. I mean, but like I said, it's still everything you said about the hijab. I'm 100%. It's oppressive. There's women all around the world fighting to take it off. I mean,
Yeah.
just this year, Pakistan had a women's march, which is incredible, and then the government turned around and said, "Well, that's un-Islamic."
Mm,
you know,
yeah. I
um,
know. It's stupid.
yeah, but so that's what I mean. Like, it seems to me like it was just they. I mean, okay, we got to do something. We got to show solidarity. And obviously it's not, you can't plan for something like this. So it was just they spoke to someone. Oh, you represent the Muslim community. What should we use? And it was, I think it was about as thought out as that.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. But yeah, that was annoying. But it's like I kind of respected everything she that I've forgotten her name. Is she the prime minister or president? She's
Prime
prime
Minister.
minister, right? Yeah, like everything she was doing, and kind of, she seemed like she genuinely kind of cared, which is something you want in obviously a leader, and she seems great. So I was kind of really touched by her. But then, yeah, I was just kind of like, oh, I just wish like if they knew more. I don't know. I'm like assuming, I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt almost. Like I feel like maybe they just don't quite get it. But I don't know.
No, but
It's a
okay,
weird thing to do.
I get, you know, when she went to the ceremony the day right after the service.
Mm,
Okay, you're going to a religious ceremony. You're going to a memorial service. I had no problem. The people who were complaining that day, I found that was kind of ridiculous because you know, my mom, who's Muslim, who's never worn the hijab in her life, but she covers her hair when she prays.
mm,
Where when she's somewhere, like if she goes back to India or if she goes somewhere where she hears the azan, she'll cover her hair when she hears the azan, like the call to prayer.
mm-hmm.
So she would have covered her hair going to something like that. And so the prime minister doing it, it would be like a U.S. president or like a male leader going to a synagogue and putting on a yarmulke. Like it's just a sign of respect, right? Um, my issue was just the general population doing it, and this is our solidarity with Muslims, and you had the newscasters covering their hair. Um,
Yeah.
all that was a little ridiculous.
No, I mean, I don't even think she should have done it. I don't think anyone needs to. If it's not your religious practice and you're doing it out of respect, I think it's like I think that the people that are suffering need to be respected just a little bit more in that situation. You know, I don't mind people wearing it because my mom wears hijab all the time. If you want to wear it because this is what you believe in, whatever, that's something else. But just to wear it as a symbol, I think you should really know like what you're wearing, like what it really represents. Um, because if you don't stand for those values, which I don't think she would, that's why I almost feel like she just needs to be like informed. Maybe I should just go down there, have a little conversation with her, and
Invite her for tea.
yeah, exactly. but but yeah, just but as I said, I get it. Like I get that it was a gesture, and it's like it reminds me of the Ben Affleck thing. You know when Ben Affleck was speaking to Sam Harris, and
Yeah.
it reminds me a bit of that because I had the same sort of feeling where I was like, oh, like that's so sweet that he is like trying, but it's not. It's like it's not the right way, and he doesn't quite get it. Like it's just like misplaced. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
so
well, that's what I called the hijab. I said it was misplaced altruism. It was just,
yeah. Well, you said it perfectly.
yeah.
Exactly.
But
That's
okay,
it.
The Ben Affleck thing, I have more issue with that than I do with the hijab because it's this, the like whatever the bigotry of low expectations, but this idea that you know Muslims or those people over there, they don't need to do any better or they don't know any better, and then it goes one step beyond. It's like, okay, we have to come fix your problems for you because you don't know any better. But then they're also implying that, you know, we caused your problems. Like, you're too stupid to have caused your own problems. So we are guilty for causing your problems. You're too dumb to have caused them. You're also too dumb to fix them. So let us come over and fix the problems that we caused for you. I mean, maybe I'm reading way too much into it, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, this has been years since I've watched it, but I don't remember that
No, well,
part.
okay. I don't mean him specifically. I mean the whole idea in general. Like,
The
it's like
idea. Oh, okay.
like him saying, "Oh, that's gross and racist,"
Yeah.
for speaking that about Islam. And then when when Sam Harris started with talking about ISIS, he's like, "Oh, ISIS can't even fill up like whatever a college football stadium or something like that." But and like there's an implication in there that, and it's not so much from him and what he said that night, but like from that kind of attitude that it's always the fault of someone else. It's not the fault of you know. It's ISIS is not the fault of Muslims. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like Islam is not the fault of Muslims or whatever. Like it's just like there's a good anecdote in Douglas Murray's book, Strange Death of Europe, and it was about this journalist speaking to Yasser Arafat, and as the journalist was leaving, one of Arafat's aides came in and told him that the American delegation was there. So when the journalist asked him why the delegation had shown up, Arafat started laughing and said the U.S. delegation was going around the Middle East to apologize for the Crusades. And it's like, okay,
Wow.
the U.S. was, whatever, the Mayflower landed in 1620 or 1621.
Yeah.
The U.S. was founded as a country 1776. The Crusades happened when? Like, why was America going around apologizing for the Crusades? It's things like that. Like
Yeah, that
that's
is very odd.
you know,
But I agree with you totally. And yeah, that kind of idea really irritates me as well, where it's just like it's it's more like it doesn't come from Islam. I think that's the way that they see it. Like if there are I saw another video that my mum sent me actually, and it was this woman that was just saying like the problem is just these people that have mental illnesses and are just crazy, and that's why they go to ISIS and stuff like that. But it's like, okay, there is an extent of people that are looking for violence, the people that kind of convert to it, whatever, but they get it from somewhere. It's not like they just kind of followed the most peaceful religion and then plucked it out of nowhere. And I think that's the thing that it's like they don't seem to get. It's like there are literal passages and Sharia laws that are violent, And it's like people just can't face that. They can't face the reality of that. I don't get it because it's just seems so black and white to me. But
Well, I think part of the problem is, um, and I think it's starting to change a little bit, but get into that in a sec. But I think part of the problem is they equate it with Christianity. So Christianity, especially in Western countries. So
yeah,
Christianity has those passages, but they found ways to temper them. They found ways, okay, uh, you know, let he who is out without sin cast the first stone. You
mm,
know, the separation of church and state, like give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Like, so you have things like that, and they found ways to get around it. And so even people who are Christian today, except for some, really far right, you know, evangelicals, or like there's a thing in the states called the Reconstructionist Christians who want to bring back the laws of the Ten Commandments, right? So except for people like that,
hmm,
Christianity is pretty benign,
yeah,
and
yeah,
um, like as far as following those rules go. So they don't quite understand that. Oh well, Islam must be the same thing. We're in the 21st century, so I think more and more people are starting to see that it isn't. But my worry now is because of the attacks on ex-Muslims, because of the attacks like just after this Christchurch thing. I think that brings it like. And before I go on, I just want to say, like, I don't think either of us is trying to make light of what happened at Christchurch. We're just like
no, no,
we're talking about like the things that happened afterwards, and I'm just more concerned about how worse the conversation is going to get. So, so saying like all of us are attacking Islam when we're criticizing, or attacking Muslims when we're criticizing Islam, that's been going on since 9/11,
hmm,
and the more and more that's being said, the more and more bad actors have been coming into the conversation, and people who are truly bigoted, and people who are saying it's Muslims, people who are saying, kick all the Muslims out, don't let any more Muslims, like things like that.
yeah.
I just refuse to give up any more ground to that, though, and I don't think we should. And I think we should continue to push back and say, like, no, this is our fight as well. This is something that concerns us, and we're going to keep speaking because I mean, I think it needs to be talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing is the problem with, and that's why I feel like it's so unique to Islam. And I can't figure out like, what people are thinking. I don't know if it's from fear, but it's unique to Islam because you can pretty much criticize any other group of people and religion. And, comedians are always talking about how like they'll rip into Christianity or whatever, but it's like Islam is untouchable. Um, and people are just too scared to go there. But it's just about critiquing an ideology. I got messages like, "Oh, well, are you happy now after Christchurch?" And it's like, what part of when have I ever said that, I want people to die? It's the opposite. What we're saying is kind of we're struggling with the violent verses and the things that we don't agree with in this book. We're not going around saying, we want anything bad to happen to Muslims. It's like, it's so ridiculous to even put them together. Especially, I mean, people are people, but also our family are Muslims, we were Muslims. It's never something that, occurs to us. So as you said as well, there are people out there who, truly criticize Islam and are really bigoted in the way that they criticize Muslims and people and are, racist or whatever they are. So there are people out there who are actually like that. So why would we want to leave the narrative of critiquing Islam just to people like that as well? And have them as the only people and not actually have real critics of the ideology itself. So yeah, it really annoys me. And this whole kind of Islamophobia thing is just, I hate actually seeing that word. It just annoys me now. Like, I don't, if someone says it, I'm like, just scratch the word. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating.
Oh no, I
Um,
hate that word. There's I
yeah.
actually I just I just spoke with excuse me. I just spoke with a friend of mine, Jen Sutton, and I just uploaded it not too long ago, and we talked about that, like the whole thing about Islamophobia, and it's just, I mean,
Hmm.
I hate that term.
Yeah.
It serves no purpose, and it's got to go.
Yeah. It's become like a safety blanket for people just to kind of criticize and say, well, you're Islamophobic, but you need to define what we're doing here, and we're not attacking people. That's not what it's about.
Have you read your government's definition of Islamophobia?
No, actually. What
Uh,
does it say?
oh God, it's a long thing, but I mean, it's focusing on it's making it racist to it's calling everything Islamophobia. Like so, it's almost getting to the point of using the term like Islamic terrorism. That's Islamophobic now. I sent a link to Waleed, so maybe check with him. But
Yeah, I will.
it's a
Wait, using the term Islamic terrorism.
it could, if you read that article, if you read that thing, that
Okay,
term
I'll
could
read
be
it.
construed as Islamophobia. Um, there's actually a group in the states, CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations. They're pushing for legislation to be brought in along those lines. That if you say Islamic terrorism, things like that. I haven't looked at everything they've said, so I should take this with a huge grain of salt. But they were saying that using like terms like Islamic terrorism should be equated with Islamophobia.
I mean, the thing is like I, I get that people are, as I said, there are bigots against kind of Muslims and things like that. I mean, I've experienced it myself, and even as an ex-Muslim, I've had people be like, go back to your country, and oh, you're. Actually, I remember when I was young, someone was telling me like, oh, are you Osama bin Laden's daughter and stuff like that. Like I've experienced that kind of, whatever racism, whatever you want to call it, but it's it happens, and it's something that we need to make sure doesn't happen. But it's like they're overcompensating and just being like, okay, so now you can't even like whisper, like you can't even like do anything about criticize anything about the actual religion. It just doesn't make any sense. Like what they're saying isn't helpful.
Well, okay, I don't know. I'll get your thoughts on this, but I'm just gonna
Hmm.
like expand on it a little bit. But okay, so right after the thing happened in Christchurch, like I saw it the next day. Friends were posting on their Facebook or tweeting it out. There was one that was like a little pyramid that had showed how whiteness leads to white supremacy, and so it was building on top of each other. The other one was this couple of paragraphs that said, "Oh, if you're white and you don't think you're racist, here's the problem," and it's all about the whiteness. And I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, no wonder they think that when criticizing Islam is criticizing Muslims, because these people are saying that if you're white, you're racist. Guaranteed. There's no two ways about it. It's all about your identity. And if they can't separate a white person from a white supremacist, how
Mm.
the hell are they going to separate you know the ideology of Islam from a Muslim? They're going to equate the two, and it's I don't know what your thoughts are on this whole whiteness thing. Like, I mean, I find it so repugnant, but
Yeah, I mean, so do I. I haven't seen that pyramid. That sounds really ridiculous. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing as well. It's like white people are like afraid to be now kind of put into the box of being a white supremacist. Like everyone's just wanting to like tiptoe around each other now, and it's just like, oh, if I say this, and um, so yeah, I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And as a society, I feel like we've become super sensitive about, and there has to be a level of, not attacking people. Obviously, no one wants to do that, but it's just gone to the extreme of like we can't even be white.
yeah, you know what really bugs me is we're all the descendants of the people who left the cave. Who like looked on the mountaintop, saw the far valley, and said, "Okay, I got to go there and figure out what it is." We're not
Hmm.
the descendants of the people who cowered wherever they were and stagnated, right?
Yeah.
We're descendants of explorers and people who took chances, and here we are, like quivering in terror at words. Like what the
Yeah.
like how?
I know it's just too much. I'm hoping it will change, but I'm trying to be hopeful that like they'll come around and like people will realize, it's just there are limits in a way, but at the same time, when it comes to criticizing an ideology, there should be no limits. Um, you know, but I don't know. We'll see. But I think the rise of the ex-Muslims is something that is hopefully really helping that. And I was kind of really hopeful and excited, especially when like Rahaf, came to Canada and all of that happened. I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. This whole kind of discussion and debate around what she's experienced and having to get away from it all and what's happening in Saudi Arabia and all this stuff is kind of actually being discussed. But yeah, I do think with this Christchurch thing, it's now kind of everyone's become a little bit more scared. Um, but I think that'll change again. I think we just keep going around.
Yeah, I mean, I want to keep, like I said, I'm not going to give up any more ground. Getting back to their Huff thing, just a little aside to it. Okay, it was awesome that she got all the help, and I mean, it's amazing, like you said, the fact that there's a spotlight on Saudi Arabia. But one of the things I saw, especially in Canada, because Canada brought her in, a lot
Mm,
of people are saying, okay, we should fight to bring all these Saudi women over here. It's like,
mm,
okay, laudable, it's a great idea, but maybe spend some of that effort on trying to fix things there so they don't want to leave. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
mm.
do you want to
Yeah.
strip Saudi Arabia of half its population?
Yes.
You know,
That's not help, and that's not really help. It's not helping because there's just so many people. You're right, exactly. You can't bring them all and just like have an empty country. No, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, definitely, if you can help people. But yeah, as you said, you've got to help people with the cause. Get right to the root of the problem. Um, and I made a video kind of about that, and I kind of mentioned reform, and reform is like a whole other thing, but in the sense of like I think it kind of got misunderstood of what I was saying, because what I meant was like that I don't see Saudi Arabia suddenly becoming like an atheist country or anything, but like they need to reform the way that they manage their Islamic views, and the way that they manage their Sharia law. I mean, it's happened in well in some cases in various laws. It's happened in other Muslim countries, um, and it needs to happen in Saudi Arabia, and we are dependent on them, and they're dependent on us. So something needs to kind of break. But that's the difficulty, is that none of these Western countries are willing to give up their oil supply, really.
yeah. Okay. There's something like we're talking about Islam and the obviously in the West the concern is terrorism and stuff, but then you have issues like with all the women. I mean, like I think those are not that terrorism is not a problem and it's not like something that should be taken lightly, but I think the general conditions, like the conditions for women, or the Sultan of Brunei just recently saying he wants to pass a law where
I know.
any one of the LGBT community is going to get stoned. I mean, that's and not stoned by smoking good pot, like stoned to death, right? Like,
It's
um,
ridiculous. I thought it was a joke when I saw that. I was like, is this real life? Anyway,
but
sorry, go on.
there's an article that came out recently it was in February. It came out in the Atlantic, and it was talking about the jihad going back home, and they're talking about going back home in the Middle East. So, like, I mean, there's all these things now. News reports coming out. Oh, ISIS is being defeated. We've defeated ISIS,
Mm,
and people are going to get complacent. Like, okay, the caliphate's moving into Africa. Like, they're starting to set up a foothold down there, right?
mm,
And then this article was talking about how a lot of these people are going to go back to their countries, and they were talking about how they're taking a page out of Iran's book because Iran started focusing more internally, and they're saying, okay, we might have an issue of where they're not going to do global attacks as much. They're going to
right.
focus more on trying to bring the countries and the people there into a more fundamentalist view of, like, a more Salafi view of Islam, right? So any of the like there's polls out from Saudi Arabia in 2013 where something like 19% of the people were, at least questioning and I think there's 5% who are outright open atheists, which is
That's
amazing.
interesting. I've
Yeah,
not heard that before.
yeah. It
That's
was
really
it was
interesting.
a Ipsos Gallup poll, and it was one of the few polls that they allowed in Saudi Arabia. And
Wow.
so there's things like that where there are, you know, the Arab Spring, even though a lot of it, not much
Mm,
came of it, but there
no.
are people in the. I find more people in the Middle East than I do. Like I'm a little bit more hopeful about the general population in the Middle East than I am about Pakistan. But then when I read something like this, I'm just wondering, like, are we going to forget about it? Like, okay, ISIS is dead, we don't care, and then until something else comes up that's that horrific, are we just going to brush it aside? And are we just going to let those people, like the people who live there, um, to their own devices? And
I don't know. I don't think so. I think the whole Rahaf thing happened and brought kind of a little bit more awareness. And I think that's maybe opened a door, and that's nothing to do with kind of ISIS. Um, but it's you know I don't know. Maybe I'm just too optimistic. I do think um, that once the ISIS problem, we don't want it to happen again. It's not like ISIS was some kind of simple thing. Even if it is defeated, it's not like we're kind of like, okay, everything's back to normal. Like, so many people are scarred from that, and we don't want that extremist view to ever come up again. And part of that is looking at the way that other countries look at Islam and look at the laws and things like that. So
maybe I'm a little bit more jaded. Okay, there's a book by this guy Philip Gravich, and he wrote this book called "We Wish to Inform You That Tomorrow We Will Be Killed with Our Families," and it was a
wow.
story of the Rwanda genocide, and that was actually from a letter that was sent by um, Tutsi Catholics uh, to the bishop or the cardinal,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he was Hutu. So, and they were like, "We're hiding in this church. We're going to get killed." And in his book, he talks about this one night, and as the Rwandan genocide is going on, and it's picking up steam, because I think there was in one point in 3 months, if they'd kept on that speed, they had outpaced, like the rate they were going at in those 3 months. They'd outpaced what the concentration camps in Nazi Germany were doing at their height, and they
Mm-hmm.
were doing this with machetes and
Wow.
swords and stuff. Okay, like it was nuts. Um, and he said
Oof.
that this genocide was going on, and he was at an opening of a Holocaust museum, and everyone
Mm-hmm.
was talking about never again
Oh,
while an active genocide is going on. So, like I said,
right,
maybe I'm
right.
a little bit more cynical, maybe I'm a little more jaded, but like I said,
What?
if the problem goes back to the Middle East and it stays there internally and locally, and it brews and festers for 20 years and then it explodes, because I do see a lot of people just saying, "Oh well, ISIS is defeated, yay, we've won."
Mm. I do think we're in a different world now, though, with social media. I mean, I know that sounds so simplistic, but I do think that things have changed. Then people are more sensitive, which perhaps too sensitive in some ways, but I don't know. I do feel like our world is changing, and like people are more vocal and able to speak out. And I don't think Rahaf would have happened. Like she would never have been saved if it were like just a few years ago. I don't think so. Well, I can't really say that, but like it's just a totally different
Oh,
world we're in.
I mean, okay, you don't even. I think it was only 2 or 3. I think at the most 2 or 3 years ago with Dina Ali, it was the same kind of thing, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
and
exactly.
she got sent back.
Yeah, we
So
don't know what's happened to her
yeah,
exactly.
and then I think
Yeah,
they don't even know what happened to a friend of hers who went to the prison to check on her, and then she's been missing since then. So there was another one, and then I mean, luckily again, a couple of days ago, the two sisters in Hong Kong, um, they were given
yeah,
asylum in a third country. So
yeah,
again, that's social media helping, and that's.
exactly.
But what I'm, you know, that helps those people who are not in the Middle East. But I'm talking about if the jihad does go back home, or if this extremism, and I'm not saying that it's not there already. Like obviously, Saudi Arabia has a lot of you know Salafi preachers and imams. Like, all those countries do, like Al Azhar in Egypt,
Yeah.
the Grand Mosque in Doha, all these places. But if more of these people who went to join ISIS started going back to their countries, like in the Middle East, and it's a lot easier
Oh,
for
I
them in the
see what
Middle
you
East, and
mean.
like they're bring like what this article was saying, they're bringing the jihad back home, and they're trying to
Right.
focus internally. Like they're not going to let messages get out that easily, and I realize that there's always ways for people to get around it. And these countries
Mm.
aren't like China where they can block everything; they don't have the resources to do it, except for maybe Saudi.
Mm.
So you know,
That's interesting. I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, that's quite scary to think about. But I don't know if Saudi would risk like that happening though, because then they literally would lose everything. I think they are very reliant on the West as well.
yeah, I mean, okay, granted, you have to take some other stuff into it, and like I said, I don't think any country that like I know they have the means to it. I don't know if they have the wherewithal to do it.
Yeah.
Like it's they need to sell their oil. They need to, they're pushing for this 2030 technology thing. You know, so
Yeah.
they have to start opening up somehow or other. But
Hmm. It's interesting, but I have no idea. I mean, let's just hope that nothing like that happens and just keep talking about. I just think, I really do think all the people that are speaking out against things like this are going to change things. Because, even in the overall picture, it may seem kind of like far away, but I don't know, maybe I'm just like living in like a different world. But I do, I do think so. I just think a lot of people weren't heard. Even though many people spoke about kind of Sharia law and what it's capable of, and how it can lead to things like ISIS. Um, but I do think this is kind of like a whole nother wave of people that are kind of really just exposing it for what it is, without the kind of bigotry, but just the honesty.
well, okay, I think that's a kind of good, hopeful note to end it on. But thanks for coming on, and I mean, please, if you have anything that you got coming up or you want to promote or anything like that, or
Not really, just check out my channel, Mimzy Vids. I've got a bunch of stuff coming out constantly, so
all right, well, I'll put a link to your channel when I put this out. And thanks again,
cool.
and thank you everyone for
Thank
listening.
you.
And talk soon.
Thanks so much. Bye.